Okay, welcome everyone to CBD class today. This is where we're going to learn about all the things you can use CBD for, how to use CBD, and why Young Living CBD is the way to go and how amazing it is. I know that we have a lot of people here who are not from the US, who are from South Africa, and good things are coming to South Africa. I'll just say it that way very soon. So hang tight. Everything that we're talking about will be applicable both in the US and South Africa. We are the only two countries that have access to these products globally. So I'm super excited. And with that, I want to introduce a dear friend of mine, Kara Edstrom. We have been working together for 2.5 years now. We talk live once a week and pretty much all day, every day through chat. She's an amazing educator, and she has done this presentation for corporate Young Living, has been asked to do that before. So I asked her to be our guest speaker today. And with that, I'm going to shut my mouth and hand it over to Kara, and I will help manage the chat.
Perfect. Hi guys, nice to meet you all. Yes, everything that Allie said. This is just so you know, it's a 45-minute CBD class. I am a green personality, so I love all the research, and so for me I had to narrow this all down and compile it so it was really easy to understand. I've done this one a couple times in Minnesota. I'm from Minnesota for the Liver Passion Rally, and I most recently did this one out in Kansas, which is another state, when corporate came out there. So this is the CBD class, and I'm going to share screens so you can see the pictures. I always find it's easy when you're looking at a picture when we're talking about it. So let's move on to that. Let me share my screen here. Okay, everyone can see that okay, I hope. Perfect. Okay, I just got to move it a little bit for me. Hang on. Okay, so here's what I want to talk to you about today. I'm super excited to share this with you. I knew nothing about CBD a year ago. Absolutely nothing. I actually thought it was something bad. Now I know it's something very different. What I want you to learn about today is that CBD is not a fad. It is actually becoming a staple in so many homes. And I want you to understand this product because, at least here in the US, February in 2020, Nature's Ultra has been moved in-house, and we can get this from Young Living. We don't have to go to another website. We're able to get it here on Essential Rewards, at least for you in the US. The growth of Nature's Ultra is actually expected to skyrocket yet this year and the years going forward. Because of this, other companies are trying to mimic it, and you are going to start seeing signs for CBD elsewhere, like other shops, and I just want you to know that that is not the same thing that we are talking about. And so I'm going to teach you what makes Young Living different. The main things that you're going to learn in this 45 minutes is, what is CBD? How does it work? What is this Endocannabinoid System, also known as ECS? So I want you to know about it because those are words that start popping up. Why is Nature Ultra different? What terpenes are? And then how do you use this? So if you're anything like me, I had never tried this. I didn't know anything about it. But what I've really learned right now is there are so many people that are getting this, and they're getting it from somewhere else. And it's kind of scary when you learn about what it is. So let's just jump right in here. What is CBD? CBD stands for cannabidiol, and it is a natural substance that is actually found in hemp plants. This compound is used in products like oils, and it gives you a feeling more of peace and overall wellness. And it is used for a targeted support for a specific system and challenge that someone might have. So these two pictures were extremely helpful for me when I first learned about it. These are pictures of the hemp. So the questions, let me go backwards. People always ask, are hemp and marijuana the same thing? I thought they were, but they're not. So first of all, the hemp is not marijuana. They are from the same plant, but from different varieties. So while cannabis should be used to describe a plant family, which includes many different species, it has been used for over 100 years as a synonym for marijuana. So one example that I like to give people, because we're probably all familiar with what a rose is, like the flower rose, like you can get them at the grocery store, you can grow them in your yard. There's over 150 species of roses and thousands of hybrids. Roses can be found in almost every color and variety of shapes, but every rose is not the same thing. So think about that with your hemp and marijuana. CBD and THC, so THC is something we'll talk a little bit about, but THC is the part that we don't want to have in Young Living, does not have in their products. They ultimately come from the same species, but they're two different compounds with completely different effects on the body. If you look at that gray picture on the left, you can see cannabis as the species, and on the left is a picture of hemp, and on the right is a picture of marijuana. And if you also look at that picture on the right, you can see how hemp is it's tall, it has really thin leaves and gets taller, and marijuana is small. They're completely different plants. And that was so helpful for me, just that visual looking and seeing, oh, it's not the same thing, because I thought it was the same thing before I knew anything different. Okay, so marijuana is actually produced when the hemp plant is grown without the male variety present. And the resin of the female plant is full of THC, where CBD is produced when the hemp plant is grown with both the female and male parts, and the resin is produced with full CBD. So if you associate CBD with the word hemp, and THC with the word marijuana, and cannabis with the actual plant, you're going to find it easier to understand. So I say that sentence again, because that's really, when you break it down, what it is. CBD, think of that as hemp. THC, that's the part that makes people high, think of that with marijuana. And then cannabis, when you hear that word, that is just the species of the plant. So if someone said rose, that's a species, but there's 150 different varieties of it. Okay, so the next word, because you see a couple of these words, I just want you to understand what it is cannabidiol. CBD stands for cannabidiol. And CBD is one of the primary natural cannabinoids in the hemp plant. So what are these cannabinoids? Cannabinoids are chemical compounds that actually float around in every one of my and your bodies. And they bind to what is called the endocannabinoid system receptors throughout your brain and body. So these little cannabinoids, just think about them, they're floating around in your body. This is something that our body actually has. So there are cannabinoids in essential oils too. So if you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I want that, that might be in CBD, it's bad. Well, guess what? Cannabinoids are in our essential oils. If you think about using lavender or black pepper, okay, those have cannabinoids in them. So they have something that's called a molecule called beta-caryophyllene. And so it's those things that have the LENE at the very end of it. Why are these oils a cannabinoid? It's because they attach the cannabinoid receptor. So a few examples of ones that are having a cannabinoid are like copaiba, clove, black pepper, rosemary, cinnamon, basil, oregano, lavender, ylang-ylang. Those are all examples of a cannabinoid. Okay, cannabinoids can help support other treatments. So this is, think about, do they have Nixia Red in like South Africa, Allie? I don't know if they have Nixia Red yet. I don't see chat.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
Okay,
they have Nixia.
Think about Nixia Red. Nixia Red helps support us. Well, cannabinoids help support us too. So this cannabinoid constituent can help support things like pain, depression, anxiety, PTSD, nausea, inflammation, fibromyalgia, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, ALS, bone growth. How can a cannabinoid support us? So here's what it does. The cannabinoid system works in all of our bodies, and because of this, there's an effect on all of those conditions. So how does this CBD then work? Let's talk about that. Early research first identified some cannabinoids in the plant cannabis. And then years later, they found a couple receptors in in the human body. And so our body has these receptors, and the cannabinoids actually go into this receptor and they attach to it. So that is why they're called cannabinoid receptors, and the entire system was named the Endocannabinoid System. So let's talk a little bit of what is this endocannabinoid system. Just so you guys know, you have this, and so do I. We all have something that is called an endocannabinoid system. I like to say, like, we've learned of words like our respiratory system and our immune system. Well, there's an endocannabinoid system. CBD primary will interact, so if someone is using the CBD, it's going to interact with this endocannabinoid system. And the main purpose of this is to protect multiple organs and to keep them in good balance, which is called homeostasis. So the importance of this endocannabinoid system is actually more significant for a healthy body than people would have thought of. The endocannabinoid system that you and I have regulates processes in our body. So here's the system that will regulate these processes. It's things like your appetite, your pain, mood, memory, peripheral nervous system, immune response, inflammation, and stress response, and more. So that is what the endocannabinoid, those items I just mentioned, that is what that system of our body is regulating. The endocannabinoids and receptors are found throughout the body, in the brain, organs, connective tissues, glands, immune cells. In each tissue, the cannabinoid system performs different tasks, but the goal is always the same, is to have what is called homeostasis. Without education, like I know I was in the same boat, there's a misconception that CBD can only affect the brain, and that is not true. When your body gets out of homeostasis, the endocannabinoid system in your body sends out natural endocannabinoids and enzymes to regulate our body and bring it back into homeostasis. So here's an example to kind of put it in simple terms. When you are hot, your endocannabinoid system kicks into gear and you start to get in a sweat, and that will help bring your temperature down. When you are cold, you shiver. When you're hungry, your stomach growls. So that is what your body is doing for this system. So a dysfunctional endocannabinoid system has been connected to many different things like IBS, fibromyalgia, migraines, Parkinson's, anorexia. That is something that happens if your endocannabinoid system gets out of balance. So CBD, what CBD does is it's going to interact with this endocannabinoid system. That's why it is more of a highly sought after product through Young Living. So a question may come up is like, you know, oh, is this just something brand new? Let's just give you a really high level. While CBD may feel like it's something brand new or you may not have heard about it, the history of CBD and cannabis in general dates back as far as 10,000 years ago. It has actually been grown and used for centuries for everything from cloth, paper, lamp, fuels, rope, industrial fiber, food. In 1535, King Henry VIII passed an act compelling all landowners to sow 1/4 of an acre with hemp, or they would all be fined. Hemp became very important for early settlers in the United States. Taxes were actually paid with hemp for over 200 years. And between the 17th and 18th century, it was actually illegal not to grow hemp in some areas. Every single person had to grow hemp. The early economy of what is today in the United States of America depended on growing hemp. So this isn't something that, oh, just came up from Young Living in the last year. No, this has been around for a really, really long time. It was actually legal to pay taxes in America from 1631 until the early 1800s. That's how people paid taxes, not with money, they paid with hemp. Okay, so some of you guys maybe have heard George Washington. In fact, an important American historic figure, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin, actively involved in the creation of the hemp industry. Jefferson actually grew the plant hemp, and he wanted to grow cannabis so bad that he illegally smuggled potent hemp seeds from China into France. Benjamin Franklin owned one of the first paper mills in America, and that processed hemp. In 1850, cannabis was added to the U.S. Pharmacopoeia, where it's actually described as a treatment for neuralgia, tetanus, typhus, cholera, rabies, dysentery, alcoholism, amongst many other things. We might seem amazed at this wide variety of CBD that it has right now. Do you know that actually in 1938, Popular Mechanics proclaimed that hemp would be America's first billion-dollar crop, and it had 25,000 uses, and that was in 1938 that was stated. So what's changed since then? In the early 1900s, a negative media war was waged on hemp and marijuana. And due to corrupt reasons, and it was deemed as a Schedule I controlled substance for corrupt reasons. That category is for a substance that had no benefit and had a high potential for abuse. That's what they labeled it. And this was against the advice of the American Medical Association at that time, and that was in 1937. Now come forward, 2014, the president signed the 2014 Farm Bill in which the industrial hemp could be cultivated for research purposes. So in 2018, CBD was actually downgraded from a Schedule I to a Schedule V. So what does that mean? That means that it had some benefits and the abuse was maybe low. Now in December 2018, CBD went from a Schedule V to an unscheduled substance due to the Hemp Farming Act of 2018, which removed hemp with less than 0.3% THC as a controlled substance. So this law actually made CBD legal in all 50 states. Military, though, has a different regulation. So if anyone is in military, they have a different regulation, but actually now it's legal in all the states. So why do you need to know your company? Now we're gonna get into all the fun stuff. CBD is popping up everywhere. Even local gas stations have this. So buyers online of CBD, you guys, I was so amazed at how many people, when I've done this for some of our teams, are getting CBD just somewhere random. Like, it's just something that people don't seem to talk about. And so like, I feel it's so important to educate on this. When you are buying CBD online, just from a random, like Amazon or wherever it might be, you need to be aware that more than 20% of those CBD companies contain detectable levels of THC when it was investigated. That same study showed that almost 70% of the CBD label products available online may be misleading in the sense that 43% were underlabeled and 26% were overlabeled for actual CBD content. Only 31% of the products were labeled accurately. That's kind of scary. So you need to know your company. And so like on here, like I have a picture, just happens to be of me with some of my team members where we're actually out planting, we're at the farm, we're planting different things. You want to be able to know who is your farmer, and we're going to talk about that in a minute too. Okay, so be aware, just like oils too, anyone can write organic or certified. So source your CBD from someone that you actually know and trust. So let's start with why did Young Living partner with this company called Nature's Ultra? Young Living partnered with Nature's Ultra because it's a company, this Nature's Ultra actually understands the CBD. They understand the landscape, the plant, the oil, and the farming and testing. They know it better than the Young Living did. And so they went and they searched for a long time and found this company that knew the best that they did. Nature's Ultra actually understands the power when you add an essential oil with the CBD and how that effect is. And Nature's Ultra understands the seed to seal process that Young Living has. That's really important to them. So what makes Nature's Ultra CBD different? There are two main things that you want to know about. One is it's the seed to seal. It's for the quality commitment. And secondly, it's something called Smart Spectrum that will go a little more in depth in a few minutes. Our CBD that we have is the only one on the entire market that anyone can get that has what's called Smart Spectrum science. CBD, as I mentioned, is popping up all over the world, and you will see them more now than ever because Young Living has it. The same way when you've seen oils, like Young Living has oils, and those are popping up everywhere that are junk. And so like, it's so important to know that you're getting this from Young Living. Unfortunately, many of these other companies that have CBD, they do not understand the plant, they don't understand the oil, and they don't understand the law. And the consumer, which may be one of your friends, or a lot of times with my friends that I learn are getting it, which they didn't know, is ending up with a product that may not work, it may not be good for them, and it may be illegal for them to actually be using it. I have found, as I said, many people through the last year that are actually using CBD, and they really had no idea what they were using. So what your friends could be having is something in addition that is riddled with impurities. There may be toxins. The CBD dosage is completely different than what the label says. And there's illegal levels of THC in there. So it's important to know to get your CBD from Young Living, at least in my mind, because you know that you're getting pure CBD with a 0% THC, and it's infused with Young Living oils. The number one thing that sets us apart, let's talk about that, is the quality. And some of the things that Nature's Ultra sets us apart from the other brand is that the quality starts at the source. Nature's Ultra CBD is actually grown high in the mountains of Colorado, which is a state here in the US. They own a 1,500-acre hemp farm. It has a high altitude, and so that means that it comes with fewer pests, just because it's like high up in the air. And that allows the CBD to be grown without any toxic pesticides. Nature's Ultra is actually one of the first hemp farms in the US to hold both a USDA organic certification and a USDA organic handler certification. All the products are tested in multiple stages throughout the manufacturing process for potency and purity. Just like our oils are, this is what is done with our CBD. The most important thing to know about CBD is that we carry the same seed-to-seed quality commitment as all the other Young Living products. CBD products are tested multiple times throughout the process for potency, purity, and that there is 0% THC, and they are going to be free from solvents, heavy metals, gluten, and pesticides. The number 2 item that sets Nature's Ultra apart is that the products are the only CBD products on the market with Smart Spectrum CBD science. Smart Spectrum actually blends the CBD isolate of the terpenes from essential oils, and they make a CBD product that is much more broader and more robust than anything else that you can get. Terpenes are actually found in essential oils, and that will increase the overall effectiveness of the product. So Smart Spectrum, because there's little or no CBD regulations, with the whole hemp plant, you do not know what you are getting. So Nature's Ultra, when they created the Smart Spectrum product, this is just something that no one else has. They have the seed-to-seal certified isolate, and then they add the essential oils to this isolate. So by adding, let's talk a little bit about this, the terpene part. By adding powerful terpenes and essential oils to the CBD isolate, you broaden the overall spectrum of the CBD. So this terpene word, what is this terpene word? You probably recognize the pictures on the screen. That's something you're familiar with. Terpenes are actually the aromatic hydrocarbon that are found in essential oils of a plant, and they are really, really beneficial. Terpenes give the aromas, flavors, and medicinal benefits. So think about like the lemon or the orange. When you like slice that, you can smell that. That is the terpene compound that is coming out. So terpenes contribute to the medicinal properties of cannabis. I have kids that play basketball, so I like to use an analogy of that. If you think of a basketball team, do you think it's better to have like one person playing on a team as a single player, or an entire like team playing together? Well, terpenes and cannabinoids create synergy. So think of that as a basketball team. You want multiple players in there because it's going to make the team better. So you take the terpene from an essential oil and the cannabinoid, and that creates what is called synergy. Here's something that's kind of cool is in 2011, an article that was produced in the British Journal of Pharmacology found that the complex interaction between terpenes and cannabinoids like CBD produce synergy with respect to the treatment of pain, inflammation, depression, anxiety, addiction, epilepsy, cancer, fungal, and bacterial infections. So let's talk about terminology, because these are a few words that you see when someone is saying like, oh, but I use a broad spectrum CBD, or I use a full spectrum. Let's just get educated on what this really means. Full spectrum is, this has, in the product of full spectrum, there are other plant compounds more than just CBD. These full spectrum CBD contain varying degrees of THC and terpenes. Hemp itself, the plant, it's a phytoremediator, and by nature. So what that means is when the plant is in the ground, so like this plant is in here in the ground, all the pollution and everything around it, a phytoremediator means that it grabs and everything goes into that plant. So there are traces of heavy metals that are left in a full spectrum plant. And so, of course, we don't want something like this. And when you have a company with high up in the altitudes and they pay attention to what is around them, what way does the wind blow? In a full spectrum, people will tend to gravitate to full spectrum because it gives more of an entourage effect. But, you know, we're going to go down and we'll get down to the smart spectrum on the difference. But so like, just know that full spectrum has varying degrees of THC. Now, wrong way. What is a broad spectrum? A broad spectrum CBD is full spectrum, the one we just talked about, but they say they purify the THC out. So let's give an example of, do we really think it's purified out? I like to use an example is if you had a room, like a room in your house, and it was a bale of hay. You threw a whole bunch of hay in that room. Now, if I took some needles, you hear that terminology, needle in a haystack. If my needles are the THC and I throw all these needles in the haystack, I can maybe go in the haystack and kind of start pulling some of those out, but there's no way I'm going to get all the needles out. That is what is considered the broad spectrum, that they purify it out, but there is still some THC left behind it. There's lower levels of it, but it's still in there. Now, what is an isolate? An isolate is actually purified CBD. It comes from the supercritical CO2 extraction. And the best absolute way to determine that there is no THC present and to ensure purity is to create an isolate. And so this is what Young Living uses. We're going to talk about this isolate. The isolates are free of any heavy flavor because most of the flavors come from something that's called terpenes. So in an isolate, there is no THC, but the isolate itself doesn't really do any good without any synergy. So while Nature's Ultra can get that isolate, there's just no synergy with it. Dr. Ali, I love Dr. Ali. If you've ever heard him speak, he wrote a really in-depth CBD book, and you probably want to be a very detailed person if you want to read it. Otherwise, it's going to go over people's head. This is where I got most of my details for this course. He said, scientifically speaking, the CBD isolate is the purest form of CBD that you can get. High quality CBD isolate is typically over 99% pure. In the process of extraction, basically all the terpenes and the other cannabinoids are removed and only pure CBD is left. The advantage is that there's no THC in that product when you have an isolate. So how did Young Living now make this better with Nature's Ultra? They took that CBD isolate that has no THC, everything was purified out, and they added essential oils. And that is why it's called Smart Spectrum. There's no THC. You have energy or synergy with the essential oils. So why do you want synergy? Because the combination of these two items, the isolate and the essential oils, results in a greater effect than the sum. So if I said 1 + 1 = 8, even though yes, we know it's 2, but 1 + 1 = 8, that is what synergy is. So think of that basketball team. You can have one person, but if you put a team together, it's better to have the team than one person. That is what your smart spectrum is. So that is kind of like, in a nutshell, a little bit of the history and what CBD and all of that is. So let's make it really simple. How do we use CBD? Okay, 3 simple ways I like to tell people. Okay, if you need muscle support, get the muscle rub. If you need emotional support or help falling asleep, get the Calm Roll-On. If you need overall support and an internal support, then get the drops. Excuse me. Okay, those are the 3 ways to know which product you can do in simple terms. So how would you use CBD? Okay, so humans and animals can absorb CBD in a variety of ways, involving different organ systems. Right now, when we talk about the thought of ingestion, right now, Nature's Ultra has that removed from the labeling. It used to be on there, but due to current laws, they had to remove the internally. So for this purpose, we're just gonna talk about it outside of the labeling laws. Swallowing it, you guys, even if someone's like, well, what if I wanna swallow it? Yeah, could you do it? But our labeling doesn't have it, but it's not the best way to do it anyway. Because you know that only you have 6% left. If you took and swallowed it, put it in water, you only have 6% left. By the time it goes through the liver and it goes through your system, it's only 6% available. So you don't even want to do it anyway. So we're not going to worry about that. We can talk about like under the tongue is considered sublingual. What under the tongue means, like if you take your digize and you put it under your tongue and you just hold it because it absorbs in, it's similar to what topical is. You would have to put it in your tongue. You don't want to swallow it. And that's going to go right into your bloodstream. Topically, this is how like a lot of people put it on is topically. You're just going to put it like whether you rub it right on your skin or wherever you need it, it's going to go get into your bloodstream that way. Topically, if you're using it, you generally are going to put it because there's a specific location. Like maybe you need some support in your knees, or maybe you need some support on your stomach. You can just put it right on in that area. It's also still okay to use for your emotions. So where do we put oils for emotions? On our wrists, behind our ears, over our heart. That is ways how you're going to basically use this is putting it in those areas. Are there side effects to this? That's a question that comes up often. If you look at all of the scientific evidence on hemp and CBD that has been published over the last few years, there is nothing substantial about any harms to humans. In contrary, all of the reports only have positive effects that this compound has on the human body. Do you know that CBD actually has, it's proven to be good antioxidants? CBD is a more potent antioxidant and free radical scavenger than vitamin C or vitamin E. How cool is that? I didn't know that one before. CBD has an excellent safety profile and minor side effects only in a minority of users. The only thing that I found in any research of any of the things that are out there is CBD oil inhibits the Cytochrome P450, which means you would know what that is if you have that. In a manner, if some medications say you shouldn't have grapefruit, now our oil is different than what the medication says on grapefruit, but if someone says that CBD does have a potential interaction with that, that is something you'd want to check with your pharmacist. But the only person that has to worry about that is if you have a medication that talks about grapefruit. Okay, so can you feel these effects right away? Many of the immediate effects of CBD cannot be felt. Since CBD is not a hallucinogenic and doesn't create the feelings of the high. I like to use the example of, oh, if your respiratory system is feeling great, can you feel that your respiratory system feels great? Can you feel your immune system? Well, you can't always feel CBD, but will it work? Now, some people, the results are immediate. A lot of people may notice that they have better sleep the first night they take it. Some people, it may take 2 weeks to a month to notice anything. So it's really important that you're patient when you start CBD. I know I have some of my team leaders on my team that like they would have kind of some of the shakes, and after one dose, that shake stopped. And so like everyone is so different. Just like with oils, you kind of have to play around it and figure out what it is. The main thing that you want to know with CBD is consistency. So it's always consistency. Just don't do it once and then a week later pick it up again. You want to be consistent with it. I want to add in current research on CBD. So this is research that is actually happening. The last few years have actually shown an increase in research activity and publications on CBD. It is by the discovery of its anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and neuroprotective effects. These studies have suggested a wide range of possible therapeutic effects of CBD on conditions like strokes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis. You can kind of see how all these dots are starting to connect. So when you think about your lifestyle, the microbiome, your memory, your emotions, the endocannabinoid system, all these dots are somewhat connected. So a lot of people can see CBD kind of more as like that, oh my gosh, it's a miracle to have the CBD, because there's an effect on the conditions. The top 3 main medical conditions treated with CBD are pain, anxiety, and depression. Those are 3 main things people use, but there's so much research and people that it has been helping. The FDA right now is still actually in the process of figuring out how to deal with CBD consumptions and, more important, how to regulate it. So not only did Young Living bring CBD into our virtual office, but they're transforming the way that we can share this with our friends and family. So whether it's someone in front of you or at the gym or anyone else. We're going to talk a little bit about the products here. So if any of you are ever interested of sharing with anyone, here's a tidbit from Young Living. They learned that members who actually purchase CBD spend $110 more on average per month, plus they order more frequently than non-CBD purchasers because CBD works. So how can you get Nature's Ultra? They have kits that anyone can get. I don't know if they have CBD kits yet, but probably something that comes for other people. So at least this is for in the US specifically. I don't know all the countries represented on the call, so this is at least specific for the US right now. I'll add that. The new CBD Premium Starter Kits are available in 2 options. One has regular strength, and that is a good fit for people that are maybe new to CBD. It has 3 products in it. That is the Calm CBD Roller, the CBD Muscle Rub, and the Citrus Fresh, or the Citrus CBD Oil. It's $165. If you ordered all 3 of these products separately at your wholesale price by getting the kit, and this is only for brand new members, you're saving $64.85. I'm a numbers girl, so I like throwing that stuff in. So that is like getting the Calm Roll-On for free. That is really cool. The next one is the Extra Strength CBD Kit. So those contain the same ones, just at the higher milligrams. That is $250. And that, if you ordered separately, is like saving $129.85. And that is like getting your muscle rub for free. So let's talk about the individual products that are available. The first thing I want to talk about is the Calm Roll-On. If any of you have smelled this, you know that it smells absolutely amazing. Like, you could wear it as a perfume because that's what it smells really good at. What is in here for oils is the Eucalyptus globulus. It has frankincense, lavender, orange, vetiver, and ylang ylang. My personal story I'm going to tell you with this, I have 2 different ones, is when my daughter needs to go to sleep at night, she's a chatterbox, she's a 15-year-old, and sometimes she just can't sleep. And so once I started having this and we tried it, now I get random texts, because many times she uses her diffuser. She puts in her lavender and peace and calming and whatever she wants to put in. But there are some nights where she can't fall asleep. And so I will get texts and it says, Mom, bring me the Calm Roller. Because when she uses this, she falls asleep a lot quicker. I use this personally. In my late 20s, I lived with panic attacks for 10 years. It came from swallowing an antibiotic and my throat closed off to the point that I almost died when I was rushed in the emergency room. And so anything like that feels like my throat is tightening for me or something, just panic attacks come out of the blue. And so it was post-traumatic. And like very randomly, I will get a panic attack. And I know it's coming because you feel like you're going to die. If you've ever experienced it, it is. You just feel like you're going to die. I was sitting in church a couple months ago, and all of a sudden it started coming. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go to the hospital. I had to calm my mind down. And I pulled out the Calm Roll-On, rubbed it over my heart, on my wrist, behind my ears. And you guys, not even a minute later, that panic in me completely stopped. I'm like, it knocked it out of the park. I mean, so it's so amazing. If you know anyone that has experiences like this, it's phenomenal. Okay, so that is the Calm. We're going to talk about the muscle rub. This is a rub, and I'll tell you, well, let's talk about what's in it. This gives kind of that hot, cold sensation of menthol, and it gives a boost by infusing it with essential oils. What is in here? It's camphor, clove, heliochrysum, lemon, peppermint, tea tree, and wintergreen. So this is what you're going to use to target your sore, achy muscles. I personally, for me personally, I use the regular strength for the Calm Roll-On, and that totally does what I need it to do. But I do prefer the 600 milligram on the muscle rub because if I'm sore, I really want that hot, cold feeling. I use this, I garden a lot. I have a lot of floral garden beds. So when you're bending over and weeding, so I will just rub this on my lower back. My mom last week, she had twisted her ankle, and then they had done an MRI and they noticed that she had arthritis, not her ankle, but her knee. And so she was put in a brace. And so last weekend we were up at the cabin and she was walking better. I'm like, Mom, you really should try this muscle rub, because I know at convention when they came out with the little tins that you could do and had the promos each day, I'm like, you got to get the muscle rub. You and Dad need to try this. So we put it on her knee, and after 10 minutes, I'm like, what do you notice, Mom? She's like, oh, nothing. So like later that night, I came upstairs and she goes, do you know this is the best that my leg has felt in the last week since I've been at the doctor? And she goes, that CBD thing did it. And so like she bought a whole thing. And I think it's like when you try it, people like this. I have people on my team, but they have respiratory. And some of them have actually put it on their face and it's just helped with them breathing. The muscle rub, you guys, like beforehand, I love the Cool as pain cream. I like my deep relief. I love my peppermint. The muscle rub is phenomenal to add into your mix. And like, this is one thing, I carry this in my purse nonstop. And when I sit at like last winter, when I was sitting at basketball games and I would pull it out and sometimes people around me would be like, well, what is that? What am I smelling? Can I try it? People are signing up for the kits just by putting one thing on their shoulders because it feels amazing. Okay, so next up we have 3 different options of oil options. They have something that is called Mct Coconut Oil. And I just want to talk a little bit about like, why does Young Living add coconut oil? MCT, because you'll see on the, you know, I like knowing about everything. And when you look at the label ingredient, it says MCT. Well, what is that? All it is a medium chain triglyceride oil that contains medium chain lengths of fats called triglycerides. And due to the shorter length, MCTs are easily digested, and many health benefits are linked to the way your body processes fats. The CBD Isolate, so when you look in this bottle, the CBD is added into a fatty oil. They do this because it's a fat-soluble product. It is not water-soluble, and it is used in the best way for our body. So we need it in a fatty carrier. So when you see that word MCT, that's all that it means. Okay, so the oils that they have that you can get this in oil form, so whether you put it on topically or however you want to use it personally, each drop, so the first one we're going to talk about is the citrus. The citrus provides a splash of energizing citrus oil. It has orange and grapefruit oil that is in the Smart Spectrum blend. Next up is cool mint, and that has peppermint and spearmint in it. And then there is cinnamon, and that has the cinnamon oil. So either a benefit, I see this all the time, and I see questions about this all the time, is there like, oh, should I use citrus over cool mint? Should I use cinnamon over it? Really, it's gonna do the same thing for you. They're just adding a terpene in and it has a different flavor. So it just depends on like what you want. Now, if I needed something because I was achy, well, first I would go to the muscle rub, but if you can't get the muscle rub, I would then pick the cool mint, probably over the citrus, just because of what peppermint does to us. Nature's Ultra, something that's really cool right now is that is only available through Young Living. It used to be available to the public, but it is only available to the through Young Living. How can you get this? For those that have it available in your system, in your virtual office, you just log into your virtual office and there'll be a little section that says CBD. So that is kind of your course on CBD. I hope you've learned at least what it is, how it works in your system, why you should never get it anywhere else, why YL is the best. There are 2 resources that I want to tell you about. This one on the left, this is called The Power of CBD and Essential Oils. If you are not a detailed person, do not get that. Like, I am very detailed and it was almost over my head, but like I took it and summarized it all into a 45-minute class. But if you want something that is like really simple to understand on CBD, or you wanted to share it with someone, there is this book on CBD, plant-based wellness, and it's very, very high level. And that is another resource. I like ending. Hopefully it'll play. So it's just like a 2-minute video by Dr. Book, which you probably all know is our Chief Science Officer. Hopefully it'll play here.
The sound isn't working, Kara.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Okay, well then I'll stop that. Let me pop it up here. Okay, so you can probably find it on Dr. Book's page, but he shows you a little bit of the lab and he shows you of how they do the testing and everything. But that is that's your high level, but a 45-minute course without going into a 5-hour course on CBD, what it is, just to kind of give you the lowdown and the terminology and how to use it.
You have a ton of questions in the chat, Kara.
Oh, okay, because I can't
I've
see the
answered,
chat when I'm sharing.
yeah, no, I know. I just thought I would kind of summarize some of
Yes.
the ones that I
Yeah.
saw that I hadn't been able to answer. So there was a question about if you heard anything about epilepsy and success with the CBD.
Yeah, I believe, hang on, I'm gonna see what it says. I think I had that in here.
Or cannabinoids, maybe specific.
Yeah, so
chemical constituent.
yeah, basically, well, that is the one in the 2011 article by the British Journal. There was an interaction that gave synergy. Epilepsy is one of the ones that they were finding it was helpful for.
Okay, awesome. And then, is there an age that you would start using? Though, I mean, yeah, I would feel comfortable using the Calm on my little.
Yeah, and you can get an Allie if it's helpful. I know in the unit on our team training page, I have one, I think it was by Lindsay Elmore, one talked about being pregnant and one talked about with little kids and how they felt it was totally fine. Like, I think everyone has to just come down to what are you comfortable with? The same with oils. People say, oh, don't do it if you're 2. Well, you and I would totally use them on babies, but it has to come down to like, are you comfortable with it?
Right, exactly.
But I have those 2 articles if they're helpful that Lindsay has done, and then someone else. One was pregnancy and one was on little kids.
Okay, and then Serena had just sent a question about, are there any conditions that people should avoid CBD? If there's
the only condition that is out anywhere that I've seen from Dr. Corrigan, from Dr. Ollie, anything that I've ever seen with it only has to do with that Cytochrome P450. If you have a medication that talks about grapefruit, because whatever the grapefruit juice or whatever that is with CBD, that's the only thing I've ever seen. But you know, we don't know 100% of everything, but that's all that I've ever seen.
Okay, and then there was a question about, I think I answered that for you, Julie Burns. Julie, did I answer the question?
Yep.
It was about specifically, will you explain, Kara, about the male and the female when you have them in the same farm and why you get THC? And that, I think that'll answer Julie's question for her.
Do you want me to ask the question?
Go for it.
Allie? So my question is about the slide that you showed where you said, think of hemp and CBD and think of marijuana and THC.
Yep.
Like as those groups.
Yep.
And then you were talking about the broad spectrum, the full spectrum having traces of THC. So if they were different, then how is there a trace of THC if I'm thinking about CBD with hemp separate from THC with marijuana?
Well, so okay, so let me go marijuana.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, so like there was 2 things. So when I was talking about marijuana and hemp, I was getting an example of the 2 things. When there's a field, marijuana is grown without the male variety. So like they could go and pull the male varieties out. So they don't self-pollinate or any of that. And then CBD, actually they leave both the male and female parts. So it's like kind of there's male and females all together. Or if you have a marijuana farm, they just have a bunch of males around in there. So that was explaining the difference between just marijuana and CBD. Now, when you are taking to get the isolate, when someone takes a plant and they throw the whole plant in together, that is where some of that would have maybe the male variety, and so the whole plant together that produces like some of the THC. When you get an isolate, they actually go into the stalk and they're just pulling that CBD constituent out of the stalk. So in my mind, how I would say is like if you took a plant and you threw it into like a big glass speaker, the whole plant, okay, you're gonna get THC from that. Now, if you had a scientist go into just the stalk and you're just pulling out the CBD from the stalk, that is how you're getting that isolate. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
yes, thank you so much.
Dr. Ollie explained it in a way that I really remember it. Maybe it was kind of explicit the way that he explained it actually, is that when you have marijuana, you have female and what they do is they try to remove all the male plants out, and then the female plants start producing a bunch of THC, which is the sticky part, which pulls the pollen of the male plant in to fertilize them. So they're trying to get fertilized. So they're producing tons and tons of THC so that they can stick the pollen to themselves, so that they can like get pregnant and plant terms. So that is why they produce so much THC. That helps me remember it, at least. Okay, in layman's terms. Sexually frustrated plants. Yeah, exactly. Perfect, Kim. I thought I would tell a few stories, and I know that there are people on this call that have been using the Nature's Ultra Young Living CBD. I told one the other night on the men's call, because my husband is obsessed with the muscle rub. He, Janet, like your husband, did not play professional, but played through college sports and works out very hard and has some repetitive injuries and back issues from all the years of doing all the things to his body. And he was running out to play golf, and he was moaning about how his back was hurting him. And I made him stop so I could rub him down with the CBD, which he hadn't tried yet, and the muscle rub. And he was frustrated with me. He was angry with me because he was trying to get out the door. And I was like, just shut up, pull your shirt up, untuck it. You can retuck it in a minute. And let me just put this on you. And I never hear from my husband when he's on the golf course. Like, it is radio silence completely when he is playing golf. So I get a call from him maybe 45 minutes after he leaves. And he says, holy expletive, that stuff is flippin' amazing. I'm using that every day from now on. My back feels the best it's felt in forever. So he applies it every single day now. It is one of those like go-tos for him. It gives such a really nice tingle. I know that's like the best way I can describe it too. I don't use it all the time. I only use it if I'm really struggling. Like, I use it on my shoulders when they're really sore, or if I've got something that's really bothering me, but he uses it on the regular and he really, really loves it. And the other thing that I typed in the chat is I have a very hyper child who needs to either be making a noise with his mouth or his body at most times. And so if we are struggling to handle that in my house, I take the Calm Roll-On and I swipe his brainstem where the hair meets the neck and the back of the neck, and I just swipe him. And it's pretty amazing how quickly it just settles his jello, as I like to say it, just settle your jello. So it settles his jello. So those are, and also the sublingual, or I should say the drops, which can be used sublingually. We've really noticed a difference in our sleep, especially. That is the biggest impact that we have personally seen with those, is like a noticeable difference in our body of something that we see as our sleep. So those are just some stories, and we'll open it up to any other questions and stories that anyone wants to share.
I can share one. My father-in-law had heart surgery probably about 6 or 9 months ago, and it was really getting bad because he wasn't getting sleep because he was in so much pain all over, and it was just spiraling, and he was getting depressed. And my husband went up to visit with him, and I said, take this, just rub it on and let's see if it works for him. He rubbed it on that night, and he got the best sleep he had gotten in a long time, and he uses this stuff all the time and can't live without it now.
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thanks, Liz. Are there any other questions or anything else that anyone wants to share? When are you getting it? I don't know if we can do any announcements yet. I will leave that up to our leaders in South Africa. I think it maybe mum's the word for right now. Just know we would not be sharing this right now if it wasn't going to be very soon. Autoimmune issues. There are no contraindications with autoimmune issues. I would say yes and yes and yes. Use it. Does CBD work?
A lot of the research is showing with autoimmune, that's what they're really used for too. I know one of my team leaders has rheumatoid arthritis, and this is her story, but she's completely off all of her rheumatoid arthritis medication. And the doctor okayed it for her because she's been using the drops every single day.
That's awesome. Kara, have you heard anything about asthma? I haven't specifically used it for asthma, and I usually go to Raven and Copaiba for that, but I'd love to hear any asthma stories.
I don't have anything in my notes on it. Dr. Ollie's book is the one where I go to look up. He has tons of, if you want to get a lot of specific on the research and what they're using for there, One of my executive leaders does have asthma. She's always used like RC. Now she's gone to Kunzia. And I will tell you, she's the one who will put it on her face. So she takes the rub on her face. She does have asthma herself. So that is the only story I know about, because she's my RC promoter and Kunzia promoter. And she's talked about using it on her face. So that's the only thing that I know about.
Okay, and there was a question about digestive issues with diagnoses. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, Kara, in the chat.
About,
yeah, I just am trying not to mention all the
ideas.
disease terms. Actually, I probably shouldn't, because we're recording this.
Yeah, I think the main thing is like, I can put in the chat, like, well, are you okay if I can put in the chat what cannabinoids help support? Do you want me to put that in?
Cannabinoids are a chemical constituent.
So that's what cannabinoids help support. I'll put in the chat system right from Dr. Ali's book, what they say it supports.
I don't want to just, I have a very out-of-the-box gastroenterologist here in Dallas, and he actually is a very believer in CBD for a variety of gastroenterology issues, autoimmune issues. His whole family, he goes, that we're stressed out, playing professional tennis, all sorts of stuff. His whole family is on, it's a competitor of yours, also out of Colorado, but he has his whole family and is a very big supporter of CBD. A lot of people had a question about Cytochrome P450, and I'm a pathologist. Cytochrome P450 is a metabolic pathway that's in the liver, and we all have to metabolize substances, whether or not they're drugs, whether or not they're substances. We have to somehow metabolize them, and so we have a lot of different ways to do that. Some are via the kidney, some are in the liver, but by a different system. But the Cytochrome P450 is to some medications, and if you're on a medication that goes through that path, and you're on grapefruit, like if you're on Coumadin or warfarin, you can't, that goes through the Cytochrome P450, so you have to avoid grapefruit. So it's not a medication, it's a system that's in your liver to help you get rid of stuff that you don't need anymore.
That's interesting. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing.
One thing I can tell you about the GI system, whenever our labeling in the US changes, or whatever country, they have the labeling. If someone took it internal, the only reason someone would want to take it internal if they want to support the GI system. That is the best way to take the oil. If you want to take for the GI system, that would be internal. So whenever it's safe to talk about that I can tell you that's the reasoning related to GI.
Yeah, because we're not considering sublingual officially internal, because you're absorbing it into your mouth.
You're absorbing it under the tongue. It's sublingual. I know when I talked to corporate about it, they were there when I did the presentation. So I mean, I try to clarify because it's not in our labeling, so we really can't go up on stage and start talking about it. Sublingual is kind of that gray area, so I just want to distinguish we're not swallowing it, we're holding it under our tongue, dissolving in like our skin. And that's how you'd want to do it. You don't want to swallow it anyway.
Kara, I want to thank you for your time and sharing with our teams, and you're amazing. So appreciative of your time. And everyone who's on the call, I hope that you are in all of your support chats. So if you have more questions, I have a direct line to Kara. So if I have a question, I don't know how to answer it, I'll reach out to her if I can't find the answer. So thank you all for coming and spending the time with us today. Have a great one.